Tonight, we're heading deep into the forests of West Africa, where the leaves rustle not just with wind, but with language, where a single drumbeat can start a war, stop a wedding, or tell you your neighbor's goat just ran away again. You're standing at the edge of a dense clearing. The air is thick and heavy with that post-rain smell, and something ancient vibrates beneath your feet. A distant boom echoes through the trees. Then another. Not random, not wild. It's deliberate, precise. You're not just hearing sound, you're hearing speech, drummed speech. The trees are talking. This isn't some jungle fantasy. It's how massive African kingdoms once communicated across vast distances, without wires, without satellites, without even a horse. And you probably won't survive this message thread unless you know what those beats actually mean. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. Are you drifting off in Tokyo or just waking up in Cape Town? Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a cautious step forward as the sound grows louder. The drum is talking, but what's it saying? You'd be surprised. Because in pre-colonial Africa, especially in the regions that now make up modern Ghana, Nigeria, and Congo, drums weren't just about music. They were the central nervous system of society. If a kingdom had a thought, a warning, a victory cry, it spoke with drums. Imagine you're in 15th century West Africa. No Twitter, no texts, no blue check drama. But you do have talking drums. You're part of a network that stretches beyond rivers and ravines, from small villages to walled capitals. Somewhere, a skilled drummer hears the signal and relays it, word for word, beat for beat. Messages leapfrog through the bush in real time. The most famous of these instruments is the talking drum, often shaped like an hourglass, squeezed under the arm with cords that change pitch. As you walk into a drum circle now, you feel it. This isn't just music. It's Morse code for people with better rhythm. The pitch bends mimic tonal languages like Yoruba or Yue, where the same word spoken in a different tone means something completely different. That's how a drum can say actual phrases, real full sentences. You sit under a tree next to an old drummer. His hands blur as they move. Bum, 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 bum. You can't tell what it means yet, but he's smiling. The cadence isn't random. Each rhythm cluster has intent, context, emotion even. It's like a subtweet, but sweatier. A mainstream historical fact. In the Kingdom of the Congo, during the 16th century, Portuguese explorers recorded local officials using drum messages to organize gatherings, relay commands, and even alert towns to incoming missionaries. It blew their lace collars off. How could primitive people communicate faster than their own ships? But here's a fringe tidbit. Some oral traditions speak of night drummers, whose rhythms weren't passed on publicly. These were secretive figures said to converse with spirits, or even warn entire villages through ghost-like patterns no one else understood. Were they real? Well, historians still argue whether these mysterious players were actual community members or folkloric inventions designed to keep children from wandering too far at night. Your guide chuckles softly, hands still drumming. "You hear that?" he says. "That means, don't come here." He winks. You weren't planning to, but good to know. The more you listen, the more you notice how messages vary in tempo, tone, and spacing. Kind of like someone using all caps for urgency or pausing for dramatic effect. Some beats are slow, rolling, like a bedtime story. Others are frantic, signaling danger or a major royal decree. You glance upward at the canopy, where monkeys scatter and birds chirp nervously with every thump. Everything in this forest responds to the drum. Even nature seems to pause and listen. But there's something deeper here. Unlike Twitter's obsession with brevity, the talking drum loves repetition and rhythm. A message isn't just sent, it's performed. It dances across the air, wrapping itself in ceremony. That repetition helps with clarity too. After all, if you're relaying a message over 10 miles of forest, you'd want to be sure the guy 2 hills over doesn't think "bring more beer" sounds like "bring more spears." You watch as another drummer joins in from a far ridge. The conversation begins to cascade, one drummer passing it to another, then another. You're witnessing an analog version of viral transmission, except instead of clicks and shares, it's hands and calluses. A man beside you shakes his head. They used to say the drums could talk faster than a horse could gallop. That wasn't just poetic, it was practical. In places without written language or speedy transport, drums were the most efficient way to shout across a kingdom. But now you wonder, was there ever a dropped call? Did someone misunderstand? Did a sleepy drummer relay, "The chief is dead," instead of "The chief is fed"? Almost definitely. And just like on Twitter, some of those miscommunications spiraled into chaos. You feel the dirt under your fingers as the ground vibrates faintly. There's something wild and intimate about it, knowing someone miles away is thumping a message just for your ears. You're part of something alive, something larger than yourself. And maybe you're also realizing this isn't just how people used to live, it's how they thrived. These drums weren't backups or novelties. They were the backbone of empire, community, identity. So as the sky turns a darker shade of purple and the cicadas start to hum their lazy lullaby, you curl into the earth a bit more. The drums keep talking, and tonight you'll learn to listen. You press your palms into the soil, eyes closed for a second as the final echoes fade into the tree line. But before your heartbeat settles, another rhythm kicks up, closer, sharper, like someone flicking pebbles against a taut leather sheet. Now you're sitting cross-legged beside one of the actual instruments, the talking drum itself. It leans against a smooth rock, shaped like an hourglass, its wooden body polished from years of being hugged under armpits and struck with curled fingers. Long tension cords snake down its sides like tiny ropes, anchoring the stretched animal hide on either end. This is the heartbeat of communication in many African kingdoms, especially in Yoruba-speaking areas. It's not just an instrument, it's a mouth, a voice, and frankly, it's got better syntax than some people you follow on Instagram. You pick it up cautiously. The drum feels alive, slightly warm from the sun, slightly sticky with age. Someone beside you grins and shows how to squeeze the tension cords under your arm. A little pressure, and whoosh, the pitch changes dramatically. High, low, wobbly. If the wood is the throat, those cords are the vocal cords, and you're learning how to make the thing speak. And speak it does. You hear phrases emerge. Greetings, blessings, even a scolding tone you swear sounds like a grandmother telling you to clean your hut already. Mainstream fact time. In Yoruba, the talking drum is called dundun, and it was central not just to communication, but to oral poetry, proverbs, and even worship. Trained drummers could mimic entire conversations or recite family lineages using tonal mimicry. Your name, your honor, your debts. Everything could be played on this drum. Not ideal if you owed someone a cow and the whole village found out in rhythm. But it gets even weirder. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some oral traditions claim that unborn children could recognize certain family drum patterns from within the womb. That might be a poetic exaggeration, or possibly the earliest example of prenatal notification settings. Still, the cultural significance was so deep, your first lullaby might have been a personalized drum beat. You drum a little, and someone laughs. You just said palm tree, banana, shame, goat. You raise an eyebrow. That bad? Only if you're trying to flirt. But here's the real kicker. The drum doesn't sound like language unless you already speak the language. It's not universal, it's culturally encrypted. Each beat represents syllables or phrases in a tonal language, where pitch changes affect meaning. The talking drum doesn't invent new words. It just translates them into sound. Which means, if you don't know the code, all you're hearing is an oddly funky beat. That's why the role of the drummer was so respected. This wasn't some dude banging for fun. A drummer was a trained linguist, a communicator, a historian, and sometimes a gossip channel. You begin to see how the drum mirrors modern texting. Sure, it's not visual, but it carries inflection, intent, emphasis. Some patterns meant we are honored, others meant they're coming, run. And remember, this wasn't all just military stuff. People drummed birth announcements, praise poems, religious instructions, even dad jokes, probably. Though let's be honest, dad jokes don't improve just because you play them on a drum. Historians still argue whether the earliest talking drums came out of forest tribes or royal courts. There's no clear archaeological fingerprint. Some think small family drums were adapted upward for kingdom-wide communication. Others say centralized authority, like in the Oyo Empire, needed a high-speed broadcast method and developed drum tech to match. No consensus yet. Just one more thing for grad students to battle over. You pause to drink from a gourd of cool water someone hands you. In the distance, another drum begins a long, slow call. This one doesn't sound urgent. It's ceremonial, rich, rising and falling like a chant. The old man beside you closes his eyes and whispers, "That's a greeting to the ancestors. They're reminding them not to forget us." You ask, "The ancestors speak drum?" "Of course," he smiles. "They invented it. It's both literal and metaphorical. The drum carries messages, yes, but it also carries memory, stories, warnings. You feel that weight now, as you gently tap it again. You can almost imagine how a village boy might have learned to speak through drum before he spoke through words, or how an elder might tap out one final message before passing on, ensuring their wisdom, encoded in rhythm, outlives even their bones. At the edge of the clearing, children take turns mimicking the sounds. They laugh, but even their play is a kind of rehearsal. Because in this culture, to drum is to remember, and to remember is to protect your people. The breeze shifts, carrying the scent of crushed herbs and smoke. You lie back in the grass, listening not just with your ears now, but with your ribs, your throat, your knees. The drum is more than percussion. It's breath, thought. And even now, miles from your usual Wi-Fi signal and endless notifications, you realize something kind of amazing. This entire forest is chatting. It doesn't care for trending hashtags. It doesn't beg for likes. But it never stops talking. You rise slowly from the grass, limbs heavy but curious. That last rhythm still lingers in your bones as you move toward a narrow path leading out of the forest. There's a hum in the air, a soft vibrational buzz, like a giant beehive. But it's not bees, it's drums, dozens of them, beating in tandem across the land like an invisible web. As you crest a hill, the view opens. There it is, a royal city in the distance, sun-drenched and humming with life. Smoke curls from cooking fires. People bustle in the markets. And above it all, you can hear the rhythmic thoom thoom the thoom rising from the palace drum tower. This is the beating heart of a kingdom, both literal and political. You've arrived in the capital of one of Africa's great empires. Maybe Dahomey, maybe Mali, maybe Ashanti. The names shift like shadows depending on which century you peek into. But the principle holds. In the center of power, drums were not accessories. They were infrastructure. Governments depended on them. Imagine an administrative system where no one carried pens, yet entire tax policies were enforced through echoing beats. That's not science fiction. That's history. A mainstream fact for you. In the Ashanti Empire, which peaked during the 18th and 19th centuries in modern-day Ghana, drum communication was institutionalized. There were designated drum messengers, trained to relay royal orders across hundreds of miles in drum code. And yes, they had protocols, routes, even verified accounts, so to speak. You push past some hanging linen and find yourself in a kind of drum depot. Large log drums, shaped like canoe halves, line the space. Each one is carved with geometric symbols and clan totems. These are slit drums, also known as gankogui in some cultures, hollowed wooden instruments beaten with mallets, each tuned to a different pitch. Think of them as the loudspeakers of the era. An official stands nearby with a checklist, probably ensuring the right messages were sent. Because if you sent the wrong beat in this system, it's not just a typo. It could literally spark a border war. Now here's something fringe. In parts of the kingdom of Buganda, near modern Uganda, certain drums were believed to be living beings, with names, birthdays, and taboos. One royal drum was even rumored to refuse to sound if the king had broken a sacred law. Imagine your iPhone refusing to unlock because you lied about skipping leg day. As you duck into another courtyard, the drumming changes. You're told that this rhythm isn't for the general public. It's a palace code reserved for inter-kingdom diplomacy. That's right. Some drums were trained to speak foreign languages, not like Spanish or Mandarin, but rather neighboring tonal dialects, customized beat patterns, so a message could hop borders without being lost in translation. Historians still argue whether these multilingual drum systems were truly effective or whether most of the new ones got lost after a few villages. But one thing's clear. The attempt to build cross-border acoustic diplomacy was bold and weirdly elegant. You pause and listen. In a sense, this entire city is wired for sound. There are designated drumming posts, spaced at regular intervals, and lookout points with clear lines of sight between them. That's how messages traveled. No need for scrolls, no messy foot messengers, just layered rhythms carrying meaning across the land. It's a bit like being inside an ancient fiber optic network. With trees, you reach a palace wall adorned with bronze plaques, intricate designs showing kings, warriors, and yes, drummers. One figure is hunched in concentration, mid-beat, with 4 attendants behind him listening, heads bowed. You wonder, was this how cabinet meetings worked? And the answer is kind of yes. Drummers didn't just broadcast orders, they also archived history. Every major event, from battles to coronations, was encoded in ceremonial rhythms and replayed on anniversaries. Want to know how many cattle were collected in tax last season? Ask the drum master. He'll beat you the balance sheet. Someone nearby explains that in some courts, each royal had their own signature rhythm, a kind of sonic nameplate. If you heard da 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 da, you knew the Queen Mother was approaching. If you heard a sharp triplet followed by a long roll, that was the Prime Commander. It's like the drum equivalent of the iPhone ringtone you never change. You smile at the thought of royal rivals arguing over who gets the better beat. Mine's too short. Yours sounds like a sad goat. That's because you are a sad goat. You imagine it escalates into a duel of rhythms until someone breaks a drumstick and storms off. At sunset, the big drums begin again. Slower now, deeper. These are the evening broadcasts, a ritual that closes the day. Announcements include births, deaths, new laws, and community blessings. Everyone in the kingdom hears it. Everyone adjusts their plans accordingly. It's oddly comforting, the way the sound wraps around buildings and brushes through trees, like a bedtime story shared across an empire. And here's the weirdest part. Despite all this, the drum left almost no paper trail. Colonial scribes dismissed it. Archaeologists find few records. Most of what we know survives through oral memory and through the rhythms that still live in traditional ceremonies. So as the final beats echo out across the valley and lamps begin to flicker in the distant homes, you realize you're walking through a world that once thought in percussion. Every throne, every village, every border, all held together by wood and skin and rhythm. And as your eyes adjust to the dusk, you wonder how many voices are still waiting to be heard in the silent air, coded in patterns only the old drummers remember. The air is cool now, and your footsteps grow softer as you move away from the palace. The final echoes of the evening drums fade like stars dimming at dawn. But the kingdom doesn't sleep just yet. Not fully. Not when there's still one more thing to do. Respond. Because remember, this isn't a one-way system. The drum network works in both directions. And tonight, you're heading toward one of its nodes. A signal station, if you will. No blinking lights, no screens, just a tall wooden tower near the edge of a village, a cluster of drums inside, and a few sharp-eared elders who never seem to blink. You settle in on a low stool, watching as a young drummer prepares a reply. His fingers hover like a pianist waiting for his cue. Then, with a sudden flurry, he lets loose. Ta-ta-thump. Ta-ta-ta, thump, thump, thump. It's not music. At least, not in the way you'd expect. This is data? He's replying to a summons from the palace. Maybe confirming safe harvest transport. Maybe requesting more salt for the Western market. Maybe just a polite, message received, we cool. A mainstream fact here. The drum networks of empires like the Congo Kingdom and Dahomey weren't just impressive. They were efficient. Messages could travel over 100 miles in a single day, bouncing between villages and outposts in well-timed relays. It wasn't perfect. Yes, there were delays when it rained, or when someone's goats wandered into the drumming zone. But compared to messengers on foot, it was a logistical marvel. But here's the fringe detail. In some remote areas, people believed these drums were sensitive not only to sound, but to emotion. Folk tales tell of drummers who could feel the urgency of a message just from the way the wood vibrated. Was it superstition? Probably. Or maybe it's just ancient Bluetooth, paired by vibes only. The boy beside you whispers, "You can't fake rhythm." The drums know if you're lying. It sounds like something your therapist might say. But here, it's serious business. The village chief emerges, dressed in a long robe patterned with tiny fish and swirling lines. He listens to the drums, then nods gravely. He's received orders to send warriors east to help with a border scuffle. But before you picture swords and spears, he turns and says, "Prepare the drummers." Because, plot twist, the army marches to rhythm, not radio. You follow as dozens of men gather in a clearing, gripping spears, shields, bows. But they don't move yet, not until the rhythm begins. A squad of battlefield drummers, light, fast, brutal with tempo, starts tapping out the march pattern. Left foot, right foot, stomp turn. They move like one creature, an audio-controlled force. And yes, this was real. In many African kingdoms, drummers were embedded in military units. They signaled flanking maneuvers, ambush triggers, and retreat orders, all through coded rhythm. Some beat patterns even meant fake surrender until the ambush triggers. Hopefully, no one misremembered that one during rehearsal. Historians still argue whether battlefield drumming was purely tactical or also psychological. Did it boost morale? Intimidate enemies? Both? You picture a rival army hearing the distant thunder of drums, maybe even recognizing the beat as a legendary general's signature rhythm, and suddenly feeling the urge to head home, hug their kids, and rethink their life choices. You step back as the warriors march past, following the beat like it's magnetic. No shouting, no barking orders, just drums. And then, as quickly as they appeared, they vanish down the forest path. The village exhales. The chief glances up at the stars, which have begun to blink awake. One of the elder drummers starts a slower rhythm. This one isn't for communication. It's for calming. A lullaby for the land. Children curl into their mothers' laps. Old men sit with their backs to the fire, eyes closed, nodding to some ancestral memory only they seem to hear. And somewhere far off, too far to see, but close enough to feel, another village picks up the beat. It's a loop now, a network pulsing in the dark. You think of your phone back home, lighting up with pings and buzzes, notifications, alerts, reels. Now compare that to this. A night sky above you, a fire beside you, and a single rhythm syncing dozens of villages across the landscape. This isn't just communication, it's community. And here's a tiny cultural detail you almost miss. The drummer wipes his hands with ash before each session. You ask why. He says, so the spirits can hear clean. A kind of spiritual hygiene passed down through centuries. You lie back and watch the smoke twist into the stars. No phones, no Wi-Fi. And yet, you've never felt more connected. Because here, every beat is a voice. Every voice is a story. And every story keeps the network alive. You wake up to the sound of a rooster, not the kind with feathers, but a drumbeat that imitates its crow. Clever, right? In this village, even the animals have percussion equivalents. You sit up slowly, sore from sleeping on woven mats, but there's something soothing about waking to rhythm instead of a blaring alarm. Breakfast is a simple porridge, warm and spiced with ginger. And as you eat, the air starts to fill again with beats from every direction. Morning traffic, marketplace updates, social pings, 13th century style. The kingdom is waking up, one rhythm at a time. And now you follow the chief to the market drum post, where things get a little chaotic, in a good way. Unlike the royal rhythms of the palace, or the careful beat codes of military messengers, market drumming is a noisy, clever mess of commercial chatter. And yes, there were beats for bargains. Mainstream historical fact. In some regions of West Africa, particularly among the Yoruba and Hausa, drums were used to advertise goods and services, long before street hawkers started shouting deals or before pop-up ads existed. Merchants had drum patterns that signaled what they were selling. Beans? One rhythm? Goats? Another. Special spicy stew made with too much love and not enough salt. A third. So if you were chilling at home and heard a familiar beat, you'd know. The fishmonger just arrived. Time to grab your cowries and haggle. And here's the kicker. These weren't random sounds. They followed a linguistic drum code, much like spoken language. The drums mimic tonal language patterns, especially in groups like the Yoruba, who speak in pitches. That's why drum messages weren't just signals. They were full-on sentences. Now, the fringe detail. In some markets, if a merchant lied about their prices, the local drummer had the right to publicly roast them through rhythm. One beat in particular basically meant, "This guy's a scammer." It became a kind of rhythmic meme. When you heard it, you'd look up and smirk, knowing someone just got called out. Cancel culture, but acoustic. You stroll through the market lanes soaking in the smells. Roasted groundnuts, palm oil, dried fish, fermented yams. And over it all, the beats. Not just sales pitches, but local gossip coded into rhythm. Historians still argue whether this market drum culture was regulated or totally anarchic. Were there official drum moderators? Or did it just self-police through embarrassment and social rhythm warfare? Either way, the system worked. You didn't need flyers or posters, just the beat. You pause near a group of women selling dyed cloth. They're laughing as one of them mimics a high-tempo drum beat with her hands on a calabash. You ask what it means. She says, "It's the 'my mother-in-law's coming' rhythm." Everyone cracks up. And yes, this is a thing. People had personal rhythms, not just royals. If you were popular or infamous, you earned a signature beat. Walk into a party and someone might play yours. Flattering? Maybe. Unless yours sounded like a goat sneezing. A little boy nearby offers to drum your beat. He taps a quick, curious rhythm. Not too bold, not too shy. You smile. That's your rhythm now. It's official. But amidst the laughter and lively trades, there's something deeper at play. Economic rhythm regulation. You notice how drumming times are scheduled. There's a beat for opening, one for closing, and even one that says, "Prices drop now." Think of it like an ancient version of a Black Friday bell. It kept the market fair. People couldn't just inflate prices midday. The rhythms enforced honesty, or at least rhythmic consistency. And if someone played an unauthorized beat to cheat the system, oh, they'd get rhythmically roasted. Again. You pass a shady corner where an older man sits with a tiny hand drum, barely the size of a melon. He's tapping quietly, but the message is clear. He's taking rhythm requests. You offer him some groundnuts, and he plays you a classic. A beat that once meant, "The trader from the east brings glass beads." It hits you. These rhythms are more than signals. They're cultural memory, oral record keeping, a kind of rhythmic Wikipedia, stored not on parchment, but in muscle memory and communal recall. And that's when someone explains the golden rule. You don't own your rhythm. Your community does. It can evolve, grow, get remixed. Your beat today might be different next year, shaped by what you do, who you annoy, or what epic mistake you make that everyone remembers and teases you for forever. Sounds a bit like reputation points, right? You laugh quietly and think back to the beat you just got from the boy. How long until it morphs into something legendary or embarrassing? As the market starts to slow and the midday heat rolls in, you hear a shift in the rhythms, slower, more stretched. A signal that trading is wrapping up. Sellers start packing. Drums become gentler, less business, more background hum. And you realize something else. Every community had its own rhythm dialect. A fish village didn't drum like a goat-herding town. Their pulses matched their pace of life. And when two markets linked up, they had to learn each other's rhythm accents. Historians still debate whether this led to full regional drum languages or just quirky local slang. Either way, it shows how deeply tied rhythm was to daily survival and identity. The chief claps his hands and the last beat of the market rhythm sounds, like a period at the end of a sentence. You leave the square, sunburned and smiling, with a pouch full of stories and a new appreciation for just how powerfully the world once throbbed with intention, all without a single word spoken. You wander farther now, away from the marketplace, through narrow paths flanked by acacia trees and low stone walls. The rhythm of the market fades, replaced by birdsong and the occasional thump-thump from a distant hill. Like a heartbeat you can't quite forget. Eventually, you reach a small hamlet clinging to the edge of a ravine. It's quieter here, but not silent. The sound you hear now is slower, softer, less like conversation, and more like meditation. A low drumbeat pulses every few seconds, steady as breath. This is where you learn something surprising. Drums weren't just for communication. They were spiritual conduits. A mainstream historical fact to anchor us. In many African cultures, particularly in Yoruba, Asante, and Congo traditions, drums weren't merely instruments. They were divine tools, used to connect the physical world to the spiritual. Certain rhythms weren't for human ears, but for the ancestors, the gods, or both. You sit beside a drum that's covered in a red cloth, resting on an earthen platform adorned with chalk markings. No one touches it lightly. Only the elder priest, robed in indigo, steps forward and places his hands gently on the skin. He doesn't play it. Not yet. First, he hums, a deep, gravelly note that seems to come from his feet. One heavy note, and the village stills, the air thickens. Even the chickens stop moving. You're watching a drumming invocation, a ritual used to call on ancestral spirits. It's not a performance. It's a summons. Every beat is calculated, specific, repeated exactly the same way it was played by the priest's grandfather and his grandfather before him. And here's the fringe tidbit. In some communities, it was believed that certain drums could literally speak back, not metaphorically, audibly. During possession rituals, the initiated might hear drums responding with whispers, phrases, or sudden echoes. Were they hallucinating? Channeling? The debate continues. The rhythm begins to build now, low and slow, like thunder from beneath the earth. Women appear, faces painted, bodies swaying. They dance, not for applause, but to become vessels. Their steps match the beat, and their eyes start to cloud. You are witnessing the ancient practice of trance dancing to rhythm, believed to open the self to divine energy. In Yoruba, belief, certain gods, Orisha, each have their own drum signature, and if the right rhythm is played long enough, the god might ride the dancer, like a divine Uber, but, with less surged pricing and more holy power. Historians still argue whether this phenomenon is purely psychological, spiritual, or both. Some say the repetitive drumming alters brainwaves. Others insist that unseen forces truly enter the space when summoned through sound. You sit frozen as a dancer spins near, her feet barely grazing the ground, her hands trembling. The drum stops, just for a moment. She collapses into the arms of two attendants. Then the priest nods. It's done. She'll wake up in an hour, they tell you. She won't remember much, but she'll feel lighter, cleaner, like something old was washed away by rhythm. The villagers begin to hum again, this time in a circle. No words, just vibration. A song with no lyrics, built on memory and breath. You hum too, unsure if you're getting it right, but no one corrects you. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. Later, you learn that in many African societies, naming ceremonies, weddings, and even funerals had their own unique drum cadences. The rhythm didn't just accompany the ritual, it defined it. If you played the funeral rhythm at a wedding, that's not just rude, it's borderline blasphemous. In one corner of the village, a boy taps a tiny drum near a grave marked with seashells. You ask what he's doing. An older woman replies, "He's reminding the dead we haven't forgotten." She smiles faintly. Spirits like rhythm too. Another detail that catches you off guard. Some elders believe that newborns recognize drumming before they recognize language. That even in the womb, a child can hear and respond to community rhythm. It's not far-fetched. After all, what's the first thing we hear before birth? Our mother's heartbeat. It makes you wonder. Maybe that's why drums feel so familiar. They're our oldest lullaby. The priest returns and offers you a strip of cloth with symbols drawn in ash. "Protection," he says. "Your rhythm travels with you now." You tie it around your wrist, feeling oddly comforted. No Wi-Fi, no connection bars, but somehow you feel plugged in. As the sun begins to set, the village prepares for one last ritual. A cleansing beat, played at dusk, to ward off illness, misfortune, and pesky night spirits that like to borrow people's dreams. This beat is lighter, almost playful. You catch yourself tapping along in your thigh. The priest sees you and nods approvingly. You've got rhythm now. As the fire crackles and the stars blink awake, someone starts to tell a story. A folk tale, rhythmically punctuated with drum taps. Every twist in the tale gets a beat. Every laugh line gets a snap. The story becomes a song. The song becomes a memory. And you realize this is what communication looked like before paper, before typewriters, before pixels on screens. It was felt. It was heard. It was drummed into the very soil. You lie down under the stars, cloth bracelets snug against your wrist, and wonder how many generations have listened to this very same rhythm before falling asleep. Probably more than Twitter's had users. Morning again, and you're woken not by drums this time, but by silence. That kind of eerie silence that means something's off. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, scanning the horizon. No cooking fires yet, no gossip hum, no rhythm, just wind. You hear a low, urgent beat, spaced wide apart like footfalls. You recognize it instantly. Trouble. You throw on your wrap and follow the sound downhill toward a clearing. A lookout stands on a rock, pounding a tall drum with deliberate force. Everyone around him is listening, tense, still. Then, as if on cue, drummers in distant villages start replying. Echoes bounce across the hills. You are witnessing the early warning system in action. Mainstream historical fact. Many African kingdoms, especially in forested or mountainous regions like the Congo, Ashanti, and Baganda, maintained networks of talking drum towers to relay danger signals across great distances. Whether it was an enemy raid, a wildfire, or even the sudden death of a king, The drums carried the news faster than a rider on horseback. And here's the mind-bender. These weren't just danger here alarms. They were complete sentences, detailing who, what, how many, and even from which direction. For instance, the hill people approach with 40 men, armed, from the east. That sentence, translated into drum patterns, would be played in one village, caught by the next, and so on down the line, sometimes across hundreds of kilometers. This was a continent-sized group chat, with no typos, no autocorrect fails, and no read receipts, thank goodness. But here's a quirky twist. In a few kingdoms, the warning drums had nicknames for enemy tribes. Imagine hearing a rhythm that translates roughly to the ones who smell like wet goats. You definitely know who that meant. You ask one of the lookouts how they learned all this. He shrugs. From my father. From his father, no books, no scrolls. Just rhythm, passed down through generations, practiced till perfect. You try clapping a simple sequence and fail miserably. The guard smiles politely, then erases your shame with a lightning-fast solo. Historians still argue whether this system could truly transmit complex narratives, or if the messages were always simplified. Was it really enemy raiding from the north? Or more like, uh-oh, stuff's happening? The debate continues, but the legends speak of entire battle plans relayed by rhythm alone. You get invited up the signal tower, a creaky wooden platform surrounded by old cowhide drums and strips of red cloth fluttering in the wind. From here, you can see the river, the market, even the royal compound far in the distance. But more importantly, you can hear the other drums replying from beyond the trees. It's like watching synapses fire across a living brain. One guard, seeing your amazement, leans in and mutters, "The king's spies don't carry knives. They carry drumsticks." Turns out not all warning rhythms came from soldiers. Some came from hidden agents, drummers placed in enemy villages who'd send coded warnings back home. Sort of like James Bond, but barefoot and with incredible rhythm. And if a drum warning was faked, oh boy. Fringe tidbit. There are stories, half myth, half court record, of drummers being executed for spreading false alarms. Whether by mistake or mischief, one bad beat could send entire armies moving the wrong direction, wasting days or walking into ambushes. In some places, there were even drum inspectors, men appointed to audit rhythms and confirm that each village had properly relayed the message without distortion. Misdrummed a word? You got docked rations. It's a lot of pressure for a guy with a log and a stick. You descend from the tower and walk alongside a group of warriors assembling near the forest path. They aren't panicked, just focused, calm. One of them is tapping his spear lightly against his shield, mimicking the signal rhythm. It's like athletes repeating a pep talk. The rhythm centers them. Suddenly, the signal changes. 3 sharp taps, then silence. Everyone freezes. Then a single pulse follows. The danger's past. You exhale. What you just witnessed was community-wide situational awareness, centuries before anyone dreamed up radar, radio, or hashtags. The drum networks made every villager a potential responder. No need to scroll or swipe. You just listened. You're led to a rest hut, and there, an elder recounts a story from when he was young, a time when an entire invasion was stopped not by warriors but by drummers. A false pattern had been played, convincing the invaders that a massive army was lying in wait. They turned back. You grin, the world's first sonic bluff. The elder nods solemnly. We used drums to lie when we had to, but mostly we used them to listen. Night falls, and the guard tower beats a slow lull rhythm. Not danger, not celebration, just a soft signal that all is well. Children play nearby, echoing the day's warning beats with little sticks on the dirt. Their versions are nonsense, of course, but that's how it starts. You realize the rhythm lives in the community's muscle memory, passed not by scrolls, but by practice, performance, and presence. Historians still try to map how far these networks stretched. Some say hundreds of miles, others argue it was more fragmented. But one thing's clear: before Twitter, before text, before even the printing press, Africa had its own form of viral transmission. Only it didn't rot your attention span. It trained your ears, it demanded patience, and it made sure you never felt disconnected from the heartbeat of your people. You wake up to find a drum already playing outside the hut. Not a warning this time, but something brighter, playful, like someone telling a joke through wood and hide. You shuffle out, blinking against the morning light, and see a circle of young men, barefoot, laughing, drumming back and forth in a kind of rhythm battle. Not war, just friendly shade throwing with beats. One strikes a tight, rapid-fire pattern. Another responds with an exaggerated thump, like he's mocking the other's quick fingers. The crowd laughs. Someone yells, "His drum's got fleas!" So today, you're diving into something essential. The role of drums in play, flirting, and everyday gossip. Not every beat was sacred or serious. Sometimes a drum just wanted to spill the tea. Let's anchor with a mainstream historical fact. In many parts of Africa, especially among the Edo, Wolof, and Bantu peoples, drums played a huge role in daily social commentary. You weren't just playing music, you were dropping hot takes in percussive form. You stroll toward the square, where a woman is drumming with a cool, steady pace. Her rhythm isn't flashy, but it's got sass. A man nearby replies with a smirk and his own pattern. You glance around, confused. Someone whispers, "He's flirting." She's not impressed. Turns out drum flirtation was a whole thing. Instead of sliding into someone's DMs, you'd send a rhythm, sharp, clever, personal. If she liked it, she might play one back. If she didn't, well, silence says it all. In some villages, young men practice flirt rhythms the way modern teens rehearse pickup lines. And the stakes? Just as high. Get the rhythm wrong, and you might be roasted for days. One bad drum move, and someone might start playing the lonely goat pattern every time you walk by. And here's the quirky tidbit. Some drums were carved with symbols representing personalities. The loudmouth, the heartbreaker, the sly one. People name their drums like we name cars or pets. Oh, that's Old Trouble. He only plays when something stupid's about to happen. You settle near a group of teenage girls drumming in sequence. They're swapping gossip rhythms, short bursts of code that only they understand. One taps out something that makes the others gasp, then giggle. "That's about the chief's son," someone whispers. "He was seen leaving the widow's hut. Again." It hits you. This is a percussion-based rumor mill, a literal drumline of drama. But don't mistake it for childishness. This was serious social glue. In tightly knit communities, rhythm carried reputation. If you were generous, helpful, respected, your name had a warm beat. But if you stole grain, started fights, or were just plain annoying, oh, you'd hear about it in rhythm form before you got home. Historians still argue whether this drum gossip functioned as a formal justice system or just social pressure. Some see it as a clever village Twitter. Others say it acted more like a low-stakes court, a way to correct behavior without violence or shame. You watch as an elder woman steps into the circle, raises her drum, and plays a slow, heavy rhythm. The mood shifts. Everyone quiets. Her pattern is deliberate, calling out something serious. You don't understand the language, but the feeling is clear. Someone's been reckless. There's tension. Then, after a pause, a young man steps forward, drum lowered. He nods once, sheepishly, and taps out a corrective rhythm, a kind of apology. The crowd listens, a few nod. One woman claps, and just like that, the mood softens again. No fines, no police, just rhythm, responsibility, and resolution. There's a sweetness in this method of social checking. It's not about humiliating people. It's about keeping the beat of the community in sync. Later, someone offers you a drum and invites you into a play circle. You hesitate, but they cheer you on. So you try. You fumble, of course. Your fingers stutter like a dial-up modem, but they laugh with you, not at you. Someone even adds a goofy rhythm to match your awkward beat. They're not mocking, they're remixing you. It's like being auto-tuned by friends. You learn that children often start drumming by mimicking these games. Play ritual hybrids that teach rhythm, etiquette, and timing all at once. It's physical education, music class, and life skills rolled into one. One boy shows you how he hides the messages in beats. This one says, "I don't like cassava." He grins. "But my mom makes it every day." You tap it out. Ba-da-dum-dum-dum. Yep, that rhythm absolutely hates cassava. As twilight returns, the village fills with warm, glowing laughter and casual rhythms. It's not a performance, just presence. You hear a teasing drum call. Someone's pretending to be a goat again. The girl from earlier sends a flirty tap-tap back. You sit quietly now, drum in your lap, just listening. The gossip, the jokes, the affection, it's all right there, in rhythm. No captions needed. You don't need to speak the language anymore. You just have to feel the beat. The community rhythm is alive, updated in real time. Everyone a contributor. There's no mute button, no delete function, no going viral. Just subtle pulses, one beat at a time, holding people together. And for the first time, you realize drums weren't just tools or toys. They were the heartbeat of belonging. Tonight, you lie on your back staring up at the stars, belly full of roasted plantains and ears still ringing from a dozen layers of overlapping rhythms. The village has quieted down, but from the hills comes a steady, soft drumbeat, calm, paced, almost like breathing. That's not someone goofing around, that's ceremony. You sit up, drawn toward the sound. A procession is winding through the trees, each figure wrapped in cloth dyed deeper than the night itself, carrying torches that paint flickering shadows on bark and skin. The drums are slower now, heavier, sacred. You've stumbled upon a ritual drumming ceremony, and this time it's not about gossip or warnings or playful flirtation. This rhythm is older, deeper. It doesn't ask for attention. It demands reverence. Mainstream historical fact. Across countless African kingdoms, from the Yoruba of present-day Nigeria to the Fang in Gabon to the Luo in Kenya, drumming wasn't just music. It was the bridge to the spirit world. In many ceremonies, births, deaths, initiations, harvests, rain prayers, the drum summoned, guided, or calmed the unseen forces believed to shape reality. You keep your distance, sensing this is not a tourist show. The drum rhythms move in spirals. One circle starts, another weaves through it, then another joins, until you're surrounded by a hypnotic web of pulses. It's like walking through layers of time. One elder sits, near a sacred fig tree, his drum smaller but impossibly fast. His rhythm never falters. Someone whispers. He speaks for the ancestors. No pressure. A woman steps into the clearing with a long staff crowned with cowrie shells. Her steps sync perfectly to the beat, each footfall like punctuation. You realize this is an initiation ceremony, maybe a coming of age, or perhaps a ritual for new drummers themselves. The rhythms shift subtly, faster now, more complex. Then suddenly, a break. Silence. All eyes on the initiate. Her palms hover over the drum. Then she begins. It's raw, nervous, but clear. You can feel her intention. I am ready. I am here. I am listening. Quirky tidbit. In some traditions, new drummers weren't allowed to speak out loud during their initiation week. They communicated only through drumming, ordering food, asking questions, even joking. You imagine trying to say, "I stubbed my toe and want soup," with a djembe. No easy task. Her solo continues, rising in complexity, matching the rhythm of the elders around her. The others join in again, acknowledging her, accepting her. Then the lead drummer plays 3 sharp strikes, and the entire crowd responds with a shout. She's in. You get chills. Not because it's spooky, because it's ancient. You're watching knowledge pass from hand to hand without a single written word. Muscle memory as lineage. Historians still argue whether these spiritual drum ceremonies date back thousands of years, or if they evolved more recently through contact between tribes. The material evidence is spotty, but oral histories, they stretch way back. And when everyone in the circle tells the same version, down to the same beat, you start believing it. Someone offers you a seat on a log. You're hesitant again. It feels like trespassing. But the man nods, gentle but firm. You are listening with your whole body. That's enough. You stay. The rhythm changes. Now it's a funeral rite. A bundle wrapped in white cloth is carried out, laid on a bed of woven mats. There are no wails, just rhythm. Deep, slow, with space between every beat like a breath that never comes back. You learn that in some cultures, drums are believed to guide the soul to the next world. The beats form a path, and if the drummers stop before the spirit reaches it, let's just say nobody's risking that kind of haunting. Later, someone tells you of the rhythm of return. It's played when a person dies far from home, and the community wants to call their spirit back. The drum doesn't just honor the dead, it retrieves them. You watch as villagers dance, some in silent tears, others with the kind of wild abandon that only grief can make sacred. A child stares at the fire, hands on his tiny drum, mimicking what he sees. He's too young to know loss, but his fingers are already learning how to carry it. And then there's a shift, a new rhythm, not mourning anymore, celebration. Because tonight isn't just a death, it's a return, a closing of a circle. The drum calls not just the spirit, but the memory, the stories, the beat of who this person was. And by the time the fire dies down, they've been properly sent off, wrapped in rhythm. One of the elders explains, "We believe the drum never forgets, even when we do." You think back to earlier in the day, when kids joked and teased each other with beats. It's the same instrument, but now, the same wood, same hide, becomes a divine voice. That duality is staggering. It's a musical instrument, yes, but also a message board, a warning siren, a social compass, a romantic confessional, a spiritual GPS. Drums in those kingdoms weren't decorative, they were foundational. No drum, no communication, no ceremony, no closure. As the final rhythm fades, the crowd exhales. A collective stillness descends, like the air itself is pausing to remember. a woman lays her drum gently on the ground, covering it with a folded cloth. No words, just a nod. You walk back to your hut under stars that seem to pulse like distant beats. Somewhere nearby, a child practices alone. His rhythm is off, but his spirit is sharp. One day, he'll play the path home for someone, and someone will play it for him. You're deep in the forest now. The village is far behind you. Its fires just a faint glow on the horizon. A guide leads the way, his drum slung casually over one shoulder like a messenger bag. He doesn't talk much, just gestures, listens, and sometimes pauses to tap a few beats against the bark of a tree, as if asking permission to pass. Tonight, you're going where most outsiders never do, into the drumcraft sanctum, the hidden world where these powerful instruments are born. By now, you've heard how African kingdoms use drums to flirt, to warn, to summon, to mourn. But none of that happens without the right material. So now it's time to see how these masterpieces are carved, stretched, tuned, and brought to life. Let's drop a mainstream historical fact in here. In many African traditions, especially in the Akan, Baganda, and Igbo kingdoms, drum making was a sacred profession. Not just anyone could chop down a tree and start hammering. The right wood, the right time, the right rituals, it all mattered. These drums were more than tools. They were vessels of spirit. You arrive at a clearing ringed by iroko, mahogany, and sapele trees, giants of the forest. The guide stops at one, with bark like crocodile skin, and runs a hand down the trunk. "This one," he murmurs. "This one listens." That's the first rule of drumcraft. The tree chooses you. Quirky tidbit. In some areas, when a tree was selected for drum making, the carver would sleep beside it for several nights to earn its rhythm. No chainsaws, no rush. Just man and tree, like a slow, leafy blind date. Eventually, when the tree gave its blessing, usually interpreted through dreams or bird signs, it would be felled in silence. No songs, just soft chanting. Because you weren't cutting wood, you were releasing sound. The logs are hollowed out with hand tools, not slapped together in an afternoon, but carved over weeks or even months. Inside each drum shell is a story, the careful removal of space that will later hold a voice. You run your hand along the inner wall of a half-finished drum. It's smooth, warm, and faintly smells of sap and smoke. The master drum maker chuckles. "This one will be stubborn," he says. "Too many opinions." They name their drums, of course. Not just for fun, but because once finished, the drum has character. Some are loudmouths, some sulk in rain, some whisper, unless they're played by the right hands. It's like adopting a very needy parrot made of wood and cowhide. Historians still argue whether these naming rituals were purely symbolic or tied to animist beliefs. That is, the idea that the drum itself holds a soul. Some scholars say it's metaphor. Others insist, quite seriously, that the drum can curse or bless, depending on how it's treated. You step into the tuning area. There's a half-dozen drums being sun-dried, their skins tight like fresh leather jackets. Here, it gets even more precise. The drum head, often made from antelope, cow, or even monitor lizard skin, has to be soaked, stretched, and tied while the wood is still breathing. Some makers swear by blackened banana leaves rubbed along the rim to seal in tone. Others use smoked resin or animal fats. And here comes your quirky fact of the night. Some drum makers used to chew herbs and spit the juice directly onto the drumhead as a blessing. It supposedly helped preserve the leather and calm the spirits. Basically, ancestral drum lube. Try not to think about it too hard. In the corner of the workshop is a display of failed drums, beautiful, flawless-looking instruments that simply didn't work. No matter how you played them, they sounded off. The master shrugs. Some drums are born empty. He taps one. The sound is flat, hollow, like slapping a wet towel. We call them sleepers. They never wake up. You follow him to a row of older drums, some generations old, their surfaces etched with the marks of rainstorms, weddings, battles, and rituals. One bears a carved image of a crocodile swallowing a moon. That one was played during the lunar eclipse of 1761, he says. It made children cry. It also made a king cry. He places a hand on your shoulder. You've heard the drums. Now, listen to the silences inside them. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you nod like you do. That night, you're offered the chance to carve a small drum. Just a finger-sized slit in the top of a gourd. Not much, but enough. The guide hands you a blade and waits. It's oddly ceremonial, like you're marking something sacred. You cut the groove slowly, the scent of fresh plant flesh rising up, earthy and sweet. When you're done, he hands you a strip of dried skin and a loop of rope. Tomorrow, he says, it will speak, and you believe him. As you sit by the fire, that tiny drum in your lap, you reflect on the absurd complexity of it all. How something as seemingly simple as a hollow log can hold warning cries, jokes, weather forecasts, prayers, flirts, funerals, and the voice of a tree, all wrapped up in hide and hope. It's humbling, it's dizzying, and it's beautiful. The idea that a drum could be born wrong still lingers with you. That some instruments, like people, never find their voice. Others arrive shouting from day one. But the best ones, they take their time. And once they speak, everyone listens. You wake to the sound of tapping. Not frantic, not loud, just persistent. Like someone gently knocking on the edge of your dreams. When you open your eyes, you're still in the clearing, drum in your lap, sun barely rising, casting golden stripes through the trees. The guide sits across from you, nodding toward your creation. It's ready, he says. You tap it once, it responds. The sound is thin but clear. Not powerful, not ancient, but undeniably there. Your drum speaks. Today, it's time to look at how these crafted voices, once born, became a network. Not just a way to entertain or honor ancestors, but a strategic tool across entire regions. A prehistoric version of the internet. If the internet were made of hardwood and goatskin, you head down the trail with the guide toward a ridge where the canopy breaks open. From up here, you can see the horizon ripple in waves of green. Villages dot the landscape, and every so often, if you squint, you can spot a drum tower, a raised platform or structure just high enough to let the sound carry. Mainstream historical fact. Many African kingdoms, such as the Asante, Baganda, and Congo, built structured networks of talking drum posts, each one staffed by skilled drummers trained to pick up, decode, and retransmit messages. Like a game of telephone, only with actual consequences if someone messes up. The range? Some talking drums could transmit messages up to 20 miles across open terrain, and even further with favorable weather. Repeaters, yes, like in modern radio systems, were stationed at intervals to extend the chain. You stand at one such post now, next to a giant wooden slit drum carved from a hollow log the size of a small canoe. The operator, a wiry man with forearms like cables, nods at you. You want to send a message? Sure. Why not? You tap out, hello. He listens, then chuckles. Too short. You just said, mud antelope eats banana fish. Quirky tidbit. Because talking drums mimic tone and rhythm, not exact syllables. A message like I'm coming home might have to be expressed as I am walking to the place where my mother cooks. Poetic? Yes. Confusing if done wrong? Also yes. So, drum languages developed stock phrases like pre-written tweets. Trained drummers memorize hundreds of these, knowing exactly how to compress, expand, and reshape spoken language into tonal patterns. Your operator tries again. This time, he sends a real message. Strangers arriving from the east. No threat. Let elders know. He listens. Moments later, from the next hill over, you hear the response, dum dum da dum dum. And then from another, and another. Like pebbles dropping into a pond, the ripples spread. You've just sent a signal across multiple villages in under 5 minutes. No electricity, no satellites, just wood, skin, and skill. Historians still argue whether this kind of inter-village drum network was formalized like a bureaucracy, or just an informal agreement between communities. Some say there were trained messengers with uniforms. Others insist it was more fluid, passed from elder to elder. What's clear is this. It worked, for centuries. In some regions well into the 20th century, imagine it. A rebellion in the north, boom, drums, thunder across valleys. Soldiers at the ready. A royal birth? Drums roll through the hills like thunder announcing the clouds. A line in the market. Trust me, you want that broadcast quickly. You pause at a well, where an elder recounts a story. Long ago, he says, a prince tried to sneak away, to elope with a girl from a rival village. He thought he left before sunrise. But the drummer at the border post heard his footsteps, sent the signal. By the time they reached her village, her father was waiting, with 3 warriors and a preacher. The drums? 1. The prince? 0. These networks didn't just pass messages. They preserved order. They were the code base for communication. If Twitter collapsed tomorrow, the world would spiral into chaos. Same here. Remove the drums, and entire kingdoms would have gone silent, blind, and scattered. You see how messages were structured. Each phrase is played 3 times. Once for attention, once for clarity, once for confirmation. Mistakes. Costly. There's a story of a drummer who once mixed up harvest bounty with locust invasion. Cue panic, chickens running, elders fainting. There were even drum passwords. Specific phrases or rhythms that identified official messages. Without the correct beat sequence, no one took the message seriously. Basically, the kingdom's version of Verify Badge. Some drum networks had curfews too. After sundown, only sacred or emergency messages were allowed. Social gossip? Save it till sunrise. In this world, timing mattered, style mattered. If you added flair to a message, it might be considered disrespectful or flirty. Yes, people flirted via drum phrasing. Your rhythm tonight was particularly smooth. Could either be a compliment or a marriage proposal. Your drum operator offers you one last demo. He plays a quick burst. That one? He grins. It says, visitor has rhythm, but needs seasoning. Rude. Accurate. You move on, your little drum still slung under your arm like a rookie badge. Every so often, you stop and try a phrase. Sometimes birds respond. Sometimes distant drums answer. It's hard to believe this all existed, thrived, before power lines or smartphones. But here it is. Alive in the wood. Alive in the people. alive in the echoes bouncing across the valleys. The forest whispers, even when you think it's quiet. The next time your phone buzzes with a notification. Imagine having to craft your message, match its tone to context, triple-check your syntax, wait for a response echoing back through trees, and still get roasted for poor rhythm. Somehow people did it, and they did it well. You're starting to get cocky now. After days surrounded by the rhythm of kings, whispers of ancestors, and mosquito bites the size of acorns, you've almost convinced yourself you could pass as a local drummer. Almost. Until the guide takes you to the royal court. Not a tourist village, not a friendly teaching post. No, this is the big leagues. The real historical heartbeat of kingdoms like the Yoruba, Buganda, or Dahomey, where drums didn't just speak, they dictated. You were led into a compound of carved stone and thatched towers. The scent of shea oil and incense lingers in the air. Courtiers move with careful grace, and your guide actually bows as you pass the inner gates. "Don't speak here," he warns softly. "The drums do it for you," and you quickly see why. In one corner of the court sits a trio of master drummers, each perched behind a set of ornately decorated drums, tall, wide, and gleaming with inlays of bone and brass. They're not playing yet, just watching, listening, waiting for something. The palace walls are lined with symbols: elephants, suns, swords, rain clouds, all recurring themes in royal drum patterns. Each symbol isn't just for decoration, it's part of a codebook, a reference system. Mainstream historical fact? In kingdoms like Oyo and Congo, royal courts employed full-time drum historians, individuals whose sole job was to memorize, preserve, and perform dynastic narratives on the drum. Think of them as the original press secretaries, only with rhythm. And these drum historians weren't improvising. Oh no. Every king's name, birth, victories, marriages, illnesses, even his quirks, were encoded into specific drum patterns. One burst might mean he who speaks like thunder, another might signal eater of 12 yams before sunrise. Both true, both royal. You sit beside a drumming scribe, a man with grey in his beard and fire in his fingers. He gestures to his drum, then to the throne ahead, empty for now, but massive and intimidating, draped in lion hides and cowrie shells. "Want to hear the king's resume?" he asks. You nod. He begins. The beat starts slow. 2 notes, a pause, then 3 more. It builds gradually, faster, louder, then a sudden stop. He explains. That pattern described the king's grandfather, a warrior who fought in the reigns and never lost. The next pattern, the king's mother, a queen whose birth was signaled by a 2-headed eagle dream. The next, the king himself, born during an eclipse, famous for issuing laws in verse. You blink. This isn't a drum. It's a royal Wikipedia, with better rhythm and fewer conspiracy theories. Quirky tidbit. In some courts, kings were so obsessed with their drum identity that they banned others from using similar rhythms. It was considered treason to play a royal beat casually, like impersonating a monarch on Twitter, but with an actual beheading risk. And here's the fascinating thing. These rhythms weren't just backward-looking, they were broadcasts. The royal drummers would play them at the start of court sessions, during public ceremonies, or when the king entered or exited. So even villagers outside the gates knew exactly who was in power and how long their resume was. Historians still argue whether these court drummings function more like archives or propaganda tools. Some say they preserved truth, others believe they were curated tales, designed to boost a king's reputation and suppress messy parts. Like that time he fainted during goat sacrifice. Oops. Your guide leads you to the throne itself. He won't let you sit on it, thankfully. But you notice something odd. A tiny drum is embedded into the side of the armrest. Personal message drum, the guide whispers. Only the king and his wife can touch it. Apparently, that little drum is used for private communication between the king and his inner court, like a medieval DM function. Want to summon the priest without alerting everyone? Tap, 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 done. Want to ask your wife if your robe makes you look tired? Tap away. And then there's the execution beat. Yeah, that's a real thing. In some kingdoms, when a verdict was reached, execution, banishment, or even forgiveness, the drummers would play a specific rhythm depending on the outcome. The accused would listen, heart pounding, until they heard their fate rhythmed into reality. The court musicians give you a final performance, a full royal announcement, complete with dances, horn blasts, and chanted poetry between the drumming. You don't understand every beat, but the message is clear. This is power, translated into percussion. How everyday people use drums to flirt, argue, joke, when the drum became a soldier's companion. And now here, you see the final tier, the drum as ruler. It's not just a messenger anymore. It's the judge, the scribe, the herald, the reminder that no matter how large the kingdom, every soul in it knows who sits on the throne and which rhythms they command. As you exit the court, the royal drummers begin again. Not for you this time, but for the people beyond the walls. Their message rolls out like thunder. The king is watching. The king is listening. The king is awake. You, however, are starting to feel the opposite. The air is thick with incense. Your arms are heavy. Your drum rests gently against your hip, quiet but very much alive. And tomorrow, you're heading to the spiritual side of all this, where drums don't just talk to humans, they talk to the divine. Better get some rest. Your dreams are noisy. They're filled with drum beats. Some you recognize, others that sound like footsteps echoing through water, or the thud of your own heart slowed to a crawl. When you wake, the sound hasn't gone away, because now you're stepping into the world where drums don't just speak, they summon. You're led to a village older than memory, nestled between trees gnarled with age, where time seems to hang like mist. There's no welcoming committee, no stage performance, just quiet movement, earthy smells, and distant, steady rhythms. Here, the drums aren't for chatting or organizing a tax meeting. These drums cool down the spirits. Mainstream historical fact. In many African cultures, like the Yoruba, Fon, and Shona, drums serve as spiritual conduits, bridging the human and divine. They don't just accompany ritual, they are the ritual. Drummers aren't musicians, they're intermediaries. You sit beside a priestess who seems half-carved from wood herself. She runs her fingers over a drum as if it's breathing. Each one has its own ori, she murmurs. Its own head, its own voice, its own desire. No pressure, right? She tells you today is a festival day, which you assume is good news until you see the preparations. The paint, the herbs, the fire, the dancing circle, the goats eyeing you suspiciously. You quickly learn this isn't about pageantry. It's about connection. In Yoruba belief systems, for example, the bata drum is sacred to Shango, the Orisha of thunder and justice. Each drum stroke is a syllable of divine language, carefully taught, strictly guarded. Some rhythms are only played by initiated drummers, others only in moments of spiritual descent. Quirky tidbit? There are stories of uninitiated people who tried to mimic sacred drum patterns and promptly fainted, not from exhaustion, from possession. Apparently, the gods aren't fans of amateur hour. You watch as the drummers take their places. 3 men, 1 woman, each one tied in cloth dyed the color of crushed berries and smoke. They don't speak, just nod, and then they begin. It's nothing like the court drumming. Less precise, more primal, less performance, more invitation. You feel it before you understand it. Your breath sinking, your chest tightening. The priestess leans close. They're calling the spirits. It's not metaphorical. In the fond traditions of Vodun, drums call specific lowers spirits by name. The rhythm isn't just background, it's a literal summoning chant, often accompanied by specific dances, gestures, and even sacrificial offerings. And once the right rhythm hits, the spirit arrives, through someone, inside someone. The first dancer steps forward. She twitches once, then again. Her eyes roll back. The drum beat shifts. Suddenly her feet move in time. Not learned choreography, but something more automatic. Jerky, then fluid, then fierce. She's not here anymore. Or rather, someone else is here too. Historians still argue whether these possessions are genuine spiritual experiences, psychosomatic reactions, or culturally induced trance states. Some say they're divine encounters. Others say it's the body responding to repetition and suggestion. But no one who sees it firsthand walks away unmoved. Because when the drum hits the right frequency, the air thickens. More dancers join. Each one becomes a vessel, a moving embodiment of something ancient. Some laugh, some cry. One lets out a roar so deep your ears buzz, and through it all, the drummers do not break. Not once, not for water, not for breath. You're pulled forward, not by invitation, but by gravity. The rhythm tugs at your bones. You find your fingers twitching in your lap, your heels lifting off the ground. Don't resist, the priestess murmurs. Just don't lie. The drum always knows. There's a myth, she tells, over the rising din. A young man once lied in temple, pretending to be called by the spirits so he could gain prestige. The drums refused to sound. Every time he tried, the skin stayed silent. No vibration, no tone, just dead thuds. The gods, it turns out, are excellent at calling out clout chasers. You see the final act of the ritual, the answering. Once the spirit has arrived, it speaks. Sometimes through words, sometimes gestures, sometimes riddles. And then, when it's ready, it leaves. The rhythm shifts to a farewell cadence, gentle and spiraling. The dance is slow. The sweat cools. The silence settles like warm ash. And just like that, it's over. You sit still for what feels like hours, though it's probably only minutes. The priestess places her hand on your drum, the one you've carried since your beginner days. Yours speaks too, she says, but not yet clearly. She's right. Your drum hasn't spoken much today, but you can feel something stirring in it, like it absorbed the ceremony, tucked the rhythms away. It's learning, waiting. Later, over millet bread and tea, you ask a question. What happens if someone plays the wrong rhythm during a spirit call? The drummers glance at each other. One shrugs. Sometimes nothing happens, he says. Sometimes the wrong one answers. Cool, cool, cool. No sleep for you tonight. There's something humbling about all this. You saw how drums could connect a kingdom, as they proclaimed royal power. But here, in this quiet grove, you realize that the first audience was never human. Drums were born not to impress, but to invoke. to reach out into whatever realm lies just past the skin of the world and whisper, "Come." And maybe, if you're lucky or unlucky, they answer. You leave the grove slowly, your steps quiet. You don't speak. You don't need to. You've learned that some conversations require more than words. And tomorrow, your journey takes you to the drums of exile, where messages had to move in silence, hidden behind rhythm, cloaked in resistance. But for now, you rest. And your dreams? Still noisy. You wake up disoriented, but not from exhaustion or spiritual hangovers. It's the silence that startles you. No chants, no rhythm, just the whisper of wind through dry leaves. And for the first time on this journey, the drum isn't speaking loudly, because today it's in hiding. You're heading into the chapter that never gets much attention in textbooks. The story of drums in exile, in resistance, in bondage. When kingdoms fell and people were stolen. When voices were silenced, but the beat remained. The road takes you across oceans, across centuries, across pain. You step now into the world of the Middle Passage, of plantation fields, of forbidden languages, but also into the world of secret codes, of endurance, of rebellion whispered through rhythm. Mainstream historical fact. When Africans were forcibly taken across the Atlantic during the transatlantic slave trade, they carried with them not just memory, but music. And though enslavers tried to strip them of identity, many still clung to one powerful tool, the drum. Not for long, though. Colonial powers, especially in the Caribbean and American South, banned drumming among enslaved people. Why? Because they realized too late that drums weren't just noise. They were communication tools. They could organize escapes, pass messages between plantations, even start uprisings. And so, in places like Jamaica, South Carolina, and Haiti, drums were confiscated, burned, outlawed. But here's the twist. The beat never died. Instead, it went underground. You're shown a hollowed-out tree stump. Harmless, right? Except inside, it's been carved with tight drum chambers. You tap it with your fingers, and it answers. A low, muffled beat. Perfect for short, coded messages. Quirky tidbit. Some enslaved communities use floorboards as drums. By stamping or tapping at specific spots, they could send rhythmic messages that sounded like casual movement, yet carried deep meanings. You meet an old historian, sharp-eyed and soft-voiced, who teaches you one of the code rhythms. It's simple. 3 soft taps. Pause. 2 harder taps. A slide. It means we gather tonight. Dangerous knowledge, he says, but necessary. He explains how certain rhythms became rallying cries, like the infamous calendar beat associated with the stick-fighting martial arts of resistance, or the voodoo drums of Haiti, which played a role in the 1791 slave revolt at Bois Caimon, a moment historians still debate as divine spark or carefully planned rebellion. Historians still argue whether these revolts were truly coordinated through drumming, or if that's a romantic myth. But one thing's clear. The enslavers were terrified of drums for a reason. Because once again, the drums were out tweeting the oppressors. There's a moment in your walk where the guide suddenly stops. You've reached a quiet field with a stone marker and a few trees. Here, he says, they used to hold silent drums. You raise an eyebrow. That's an oxymoron, if you've ever heard one. But he explains. When physical drums were banned, enslaved people developed body percussion, slapping thighs, chests, feet, to mimic the rhythms. Sometimes even just through humming patterns or clapping in disguised meters. Entire musical traditions evolved from this improvisation. Ham bone, patting juba, and later elements of blues and gospel. In a sense, the forbidden drum birthed the American sound. You are shown a small wooden object that looks like a spindle. Tongue drum, says the guide. Used by Maroons hiding in the mountains. Looks like a toy, but carried the weight of a rebellion. You sit beside a fire pit and learn one more rhythm. This one heavier, slower. It means they're watching. Stay low, stay ready. It crawls under your skin. You think back. Just days ago, you were giggling at court signals and rhythm-based flirting. Now, you're hearing the same tool used for survival, for defiance, for hope scraped together from dust. You ask what happened next. The guide sighs, long and deep. The drum was never fully restored. In many places, it remained feared well into the 20th century. But it adapted. It slid into churches under different names. It reappeared in jazz clubs. It hid in bass lines and break beats. It never stopped speaking. Even now, you're told, some elders pass down rhythm codes to grandchildren, not for rebellion, but remembrance. A way to say, we endured. It's poetic in a haunting way. How the very tool once used to announce kings, summon gods, and stir up dances under moonlight became, in exile, a lifeline. And it didn't die, it evolved. You end the day beneath a huge baobab tree, roots curling like 100 sleeping limbs. You tap your drum softly, your old dusty travel companion. You try the 3 soft 2 hard rhythm. Pause. Somewhere in the trees, a bird answers. Not with song, but with rhythm. You smile. Because even in exile, even in silence, the message gets through. Tomorrow, you make your final journey. The drum's not done. You'll see how it morphed into the music of freedom, of movement, of modern identity. From Twitter threads to viral beats, this ancient language still tweets back. But tonight, rest easy. The ancestors are still drumming. You don't even need directions anymore. Your feet just know. By now, the rhythms are baked into your muscles. Your fingers tap cadences on your thigh without thinking. Your ears twitch when someone drops a beat too clean to be accidental. It's like you've been retuned, like your nervous system now speaks drum. And today, your journey reaches its last destination. You walk into a city, not a jungle, not a village, not a palace. A humming, chaotic, neon-lit metropolis. And yet, the beat is still here. Every car that thumps past with its bass turned up, every busker with a battered djembe, every club DJ sampling some old rhythm from the 1800s, they're all keeping the signal alive. The drum has gone digital, mainstream historical fact. Much of modern African and African diaspora music, from Afrobeat to hip-hop, from samba to reggae, draws directly from traditional drum patterns. Artists like Fela Kuti, Youssou N'Dour, and even American icons like James Brown were shaped by the polyrhythmic foundations laid centuries ago. The talking drum may not always be visible, but you can hear it in every track that gets people dancing from Lagos to London. You find yourself at a street performance, somewhere in a crowd. The performer wears jeans and sneakers, a laptop balanced on a portable table, and beside him, a battered dun-dun drum. He mixes it live, weaving in synth and samples. But the core beat, oh, you recognize it. It's that old war cadence from Section 5, only now it's riding a trap hi-hat and sub-bass line. You smile. Time's a loop. The message didn't fade, it just got better production. Quirky tidbit. There's a nightclub in Johannesburg where the entire evening is run on traditional drum cycles. The DJ isn't even visible, just a circle of drummers passing rhythms to one another while dancers interpret the shifts. It's like a silent rave, but ancient. You meet a young woman, producer, artist, historian in sneakers and sunglasses. She invites you into her studio and shows you a project, digitizing old Yoruba drum phrases and embedding them into AI-composed music. It's like remixing the ancestors, she says with a grin. And you realize this isn't just cultural nostalgia, it's a resurgence. Historians still argue, she tells you, whether we're preserving the past or inventing a new one. But honestly, I think we're just letting the drum do what it's always done, which is speak, signal, subvert, seduce, sustain. She plays you a beat she's working on. The computer screen lights up with patterns, waveforms, rhythm maps. But underneath the tech, your ears catch something familiar. That sacred pattern from Section 13, the one that summons spirits. You close your eyes and hear it differently now. Not a chant, not a call, a claim. This generation isn't asking for permission. They're remixing royalty with rebellion, digital grooves with ancestral echoes. The drum isn't a relic, it's the Wi-Fi signal of cultural identity, still beaming strong. You take a walk through the city after dark. Every corner hums with rhythm. Teenagers freestyle over conga lines. Elders play dominoes to the beat of old mbira loops. Motorbikes honk in time with a passing gangjan drum. This isn't a history lesson anymore. It's alive. And that beginner's drum you've carried, it's glowing in your hands. Not literally, don't panic, but it feels ready. You find a small park, sit under a flickering street lamp, and play the simplest beat you know. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It echoes, faintly. Not in the air, but in the nods of a stranger passing by. In the sway of a nearby girl dancing to her headphones. In your own chest, sinking heartbeat to rhythm like it's always been there. The journey ends not with a bang, but with a pulse. Steady, undeniable. The city fades behind you, like the soft hiss of vinyl at the end of a favorite track. Your feet slow, your shoulders ease. Every muscle that once twitched to rhythm now simply exhales. The world is quieter here. The drums don't vanish. They simply settle, like embers in a fire pit, still glowing beneath the ash, waiting for morning. You lay down somewhere safe, somewhere shaded. The sky is wide above you, stars scattered like forgotten shells from a shaker. And just under your back, the earth hums ever so gently. A memory of a beat long ago. Or maybe just your own breath. The story has circled through kings and messengers, dancers and rebels, gods and ghosts. But at its heart, it was always about you. Listening, feeling, moving with the message. Because you're part of the rhythm now. Maybe tomorrow you'll hear a distant drum and recognize the pattern. Or maybe you'll tap a rhythm absent-mindedly and someone across the room will nod. Connection doesn't need a hashtag. It just needs a beat. So let your breath slow. Let your mind drift. Let the last vibrations of this ancient, echoing language rock you gently, like the tide of sound lapping against the shore of sleep. You've made the full journey. From tweet to thud, from palace to plantation, from sacred grove to nightclub floor. And still the drum speaks. Still it waits. Good night.